Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be painting up a Heretic priest for Trench Crusade. However, I'm not going to be painting up the official model, as it's one of the most disappointing in the entire range. I really like the artwork for this model, and the artwork in general is one of the reasons I fell in love with painting Trench Crusade models. However, the official model is somewhat lackluster and not really something I'm too interested in painting. So I went online to try and see if I could find a decent proxy, and a really good site that I've used in the past is Mysterium Games. They have hundreds of incredibly sculpted models, most of which are suitable for Trench Crusade. And there was honestly so many good ones to choose from, I really couldn't decide, but ended up going for their Keeper of Secrets model, which I thought was a much nicer fit. And if you're watching this video, you will have already seen the thumbnail, so you have a good idea how the model turned out. It was supposed to have this really grim-dark looking patchwork fleshy robe. However, I can't help but feeling I've just painted up some kind of goblin in a pretty little pink dress. And the whole model is giving me serious Mr. Flibble from Red Dwarf vibes. And just wanted to throw that in before we get started. And let me know in the comments down below, is it a heretic priest or a goblin in a dress? But I think I unfortunately already know the answer. So let's get into the painting, and first of all I'm going to get the model primed, and for that I'm going to be using some Green Stuff World Matte Black Surface Primer. This is one of my go-to primers. It's nice and cheap and comes in a really big bottle and is thin enough to use without thinning through the airbrush. So it's going to give a really nice thin matte black finish without much fuss. I'm then going to go in with some Liquitex titanium white ink and use this to apply a zenithal highlight. And the reason I prefer using white ink over, say, a white paint is purely, again, the fact that I can use this straight through the airbrush without any thinning. But of course, any white you have would also do here. And I'm just applying this zenithal highlight from above and at 45 degrees, which is going to give me a white base to work from, which is going to make the application of the upcoming paints a little bit easier, while also leaving a little bit of shade still in all of the recesses and shadowed areas. Next up, I'm going to be base coating the flesh panels from the robe, and I decided to go for some Pro Acryl dark warm flesh tone, and this is more of an orangey flesh tone, and although that's not necessarily the end result that I'm going for, I'm going to be using a lot of additional washes and layers on top of this. So the truth is, the base coat here is fairly irrelevant, and you could pretty much base coat it in any flesh colour of your choosing. I would just go for something more on the darker side rather than the lighter, as this is just the base coat. I then went in with a dry brush of some Army Painter leopard stone skin, and this should just apply some basic highlights to all of the fleshy fabric panels. And again, the highlight colour here isn't so important, as long as it's a brighter colour than the previous base coat, and you don't have to be too neat or tidy and worry about applying perfect highlights during this step, as all I'm trying to do here is apply a very basic volumetric highlight in a rough skin tone. And next I'm going to be switching to some Citadel Caraborg Crimson Wash and applying an all over coat of this to all of the fleshy robe area. And this is going to completely change the colour and tone of all of these areas. And that's the main reason I wasn't too worried about highlight placement in the previous dry brush step, as I knew that most of it was going to be covered by this step. And once fully dried, that should leave a really interesting dark reddish skin tone, with some of the previous orange still visible in places. And I'm then just going to go back in with the same flesh highlight colour and reapply the exact same dry brush, but this time over the more reddish skin tone. And a big reason that I'm using a dry brush for all of the highlights is due to all of the folds that are on the robe, which really lends to the dry brush technique. Just make sure that you have a really small amount of paint on the tip of your brush, and this should deposit the paint on all of the high points and ridges that are across the entire robe area. I then decided to switch my focus to the rest of the model, which was unpainted, firstly starting with the skin, and I decided to give that an all-over coat with some Vallejo Express Mummy White. And then painting the leather helmet with some Vallejo Express Battle Dress Brown. And with both these areas I just applied one coat and allowed them time to fully dry. I then decided to tackle all of the metallic areas, and to do that I went with some Army Painter Heavy Metal and used this to paint in the shoulder pads, the rings on the front of the model, and all of the spikes that are on the helmet as well. And now comes the really annoying part where I need to paint in and highlight all of the stitching across the entire robe and also on the mouth as well. And there's quite a lot of these spread across the model. So I just took my time here and made sure I covered the entire stitch with the black, trying to make sure that I didn't get any misplaced brushstrokes onto any of the pink robe area. And I also used this same black just to carefully black line all of the gaps between all of the flesh panels. And then quickly coming in with some Army Painter Deep Grey and giving all of the stitches a quick highlight, which wasn't nearly as painful as the base coating process. I then quickly went in with some Citadel Deepkin Flesh and used this to highlight the skin, which is going to give it a very slightly green tint as well. And I'm not going to cover the entire skin with this, I'm just going to quickly hit all of the upward facing surfaces. I then turned my focus back to the flesh robe, and I wanted to add a little bit more of a gory reddish tint. So I went for a coat of some Villainy Inks Caput Mortem, and I'm just going to give this an all over coat to all of the fleshy areas and allow it to dry for around 30 minutes. And you can either come in with a Q-tip or a makeup sponge. I normally prefer using the makeup sponge. And for this removal process, I'm not going to be using any white spirits. I'm just going to be dabbing the Q-tip on all of the raised ridges on the robe. And this should remove some of the Caput Mortem from all of these areas. And because I'm not using any white spirits, it's not going to be removing all of it. And because of the dabbing motion, it should help to create a little bit of a mottled effect on the skin. And after that had fully dried, I made up a quick base and got the model mounted. And then decided to finish the model off with a quick spray of some Army Painter True Blood. And I just applied this by dipping it in an old toothbrush and then flicking it randomly across the model. And that's the model now complete. And as always, a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube members. Really appreciate all of your support. And do let me know in the comments down below, Heretic Priest or Goblin in a Dress. And I'll see you in the next one.